All right. Welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 4, I think. 4? 1, 2. Yes, 4. um, Today's topic is something that you suggested, which I am I think this one's going to be good because I think we both are going to see pretty accurately on this one. And it is going to be about iPad kids. So, before we get into it, for those who don't know, the current, shall we say, lingo is an iPad kid is someone who is a very specific type of child, probably uh somewhere between probably around a toddler's age, so 9, 8, 4, and they're a kid who spends a excessive amount of time on an iPad. And for my generation, we make jokes and memes about it where the iPad kid is the one, he's 3 inches from the screen and he's wiping his nose. He's making all these noises and he's greasy fingers from a Dorito and he's touching the screen. It's a very like gross image, but it's all for humor. But it's basically an iPad kid is a term for a child who is basically being raised on an iPad, and they are getting no other forms of experience physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever. Um, so I guess we'll start with your opinion on an iPad kid. Do you like it, dislike it, in between? What?
Well, let me just first say we have to break it down by age.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, when young children start off at a very young age, let's say 6 or under, and they start getting the habit of playing with the iPad, and they're learning skills, and the time is restricted, and uh, it goes along, let's say, with their computer skills. I think if parents step in and they have right away, they have guidelines for the children, I think it can be productive.
Okay.
As the child gets older, and I just want to state that I was a teacher for 33 years.
Right.
So I have a certain viewpoint as to how much time a child should spend on a computer, how much time a child should spend on a iPad playing games. As the child gets older, uh, sometimes parents have the mortal sin of using the iPad as a babysitting mechanism. And that really annoys me because I find that to be destructive. I
Yeah.
consider it to be the basis for destruction over the course of the child's pre-teen, teenage, and possibly adult years. And I'll get into that later,
Okay.
how, excuse me, how it can be harmful. Um, Let me just mention what I did when I was a child's age, a young child. Naturally, we didn't have computer games, so I made up my own games. I used dice games to make up baseball leagues and teams, and I kept scores, and I figured out batting averages, and it helped me with my math. Uh, but I couldn't wait to get outside. Couldn't wait to get outside to play with my friends. Uh, so I had nothing to challenge me to say, I got to stay inside. I wanted to get outside. I wanted to go to the park. I wanted to be with my friends. And as I got older, I wanted to socialize more. This is my point of contention with computer games. It allows you to get online and socialize online, perhaps when you're into games where multiple people are playing at the same time, but you're not actually physically socializing. Um, Again, well, this is my opinion. but I will give certain facts backed up by certain agencies at the end of this discussion.
Well,
Um,
well, hold on. I wanna separate something because you went through the lifespan of games, and that includes both toddler and people my age. So I would say let's because I wanna talk about both of these. Let's start with just the toddler. I want to start with just let's say birth to 11 years old. Let's start there because there are things that I agree with and disagree with what you're saying, but it also depends deeply on age. So, with the idea of an iPad kid, someone who's being raised off of an iPad and using the iPad as a babysitter, um, I I agree. I think it's an awful thing. I think sometimes it's necessary because when you're a single mom or when you're a single dad or um, even if you're not a single parent but you are trying to raise kids and in the American society where we live where a single income household is very improbable these days to then have having two income household somehow you also have to entertain the child give him the ability to do things on their own and have them pay attention to something while you go and cook for them or clean for them or do what's need to be done. I understand the convenience of the iPad.
can I interrupt you for a second?
Go ahead.
Okay. You know what a book is?
I do.
Okay. When I was younger, between probably up until the age of 13, my parents used to buy me once a week, every 2 weeks, a book from the Hardy Boy series
Yeah.
or a book from the Chip Hilton series, which was written by Claire B., who was a Hall of Fame um, coach. And it was about a boy, Chip Hilton, in a small town. And I was encouraged to read. Now, again, I'll preface that there weren't any computer games and there wasn't streaming then, but I enjoyed it. And there is still no reason today why parents, in lieu of a computer game where the child might be playing it 4 or 5 hours or more a day, giving the child a, and having him get interested in something where he gets into a series, like we might get into a Netflix series.
Right. You and I might watch something together, or like how when I visit you, we watch Star Trek.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
Well, but
again,
so that's hold on. I gotta pause you right here. That is a
alternative.
that's an alternative, but I also have something to say about that because so there is both an issue with the time spent on an iPad, but simultaneously there is an equal effort and problem with what is being the iPad is being used for. So if you were to tell me the issue is they're not reading, I would argue there's plenty of kids who read on an iPad or who do educational stuff on an iPad. Their parents only allow them to play educational games or semi-educational things that are may not necessarily be like count numbers, but it's a puzzle game. It gets you thinking, or it's something, it's not just, Mario. It's something further than that. Because arguably, yes, even if it's educational games, at a certain point, you should get them off the iPad and they should go out and physically do something or build with their hands, motor skills, certain macro motor skills, because an iPad works their micro motor skills, small movements with their fingers and gentle motions. And
That's good for that has helped children with autism, by the way.
right, right, exactly. And that's why I'm saying is like, this is where we get into the difficult dichotomy of, shall we say, an iPad kit, because there's a lot of convenience and a lot of good that you can find when dealing with an iPad uh, when given to a child. You get an infinite amount of education that they can't get or won't get at a physical institution, and they can get it at the rate and pace that they want. So if they're not completing it, if they can't get this math problem, they can do it over and over and over again until they get it. Versus in class, you only have 30 minutes until math is over. So that sort of freedom to do it at their own pace allows them to excel and have take education home with them. So that's great. Um, I what I find though is a lot of parents will sort of give them YouTube and let them run free. And because YouTube is YouTube, it's YouTube has YouTube Kids. No one uses YouTube Kids. I For the life of me, I do not know a single person who actually uses YouTube Kids. And the problem is because a lot of YouTubers who are or YouTubers who are for kids by YouTube standards are not for kids, but because of how strict their ruling is. When in actuality, even I would say some of the ones that are deemed not suitable for kids are fine. I don't have an issue with that. But for that reason, parents put them on normal YouTube where they are open to the world of the internet. And I think that is part of the issue is these parents going, yeah, go ahead. You got YouTube. Do what you want. Look up what you want. It's free videos for hours and it's unmonitored to the absolute max. If you want to leave your kid for an hour and let him do whatever he wants, play, watch YouTube, play random games, fine. But teach him to not, in my opinion, teach him or her to not put the iPad 2 inches from your face because that's going to screw up your eyes. Teach him proper distance. And after that hour, see if you can get them to do something educational if they're still going to use the iPad. You know what I mean? Try and meter both ends is my point, I think. Um, because,
I know a lot of children come home, their homework is on the iPad. So that's one thing. But I'm specifically talking about gaming. Um,
specifically, like, you're talking about the non educational games.
right.
Okay.
Uh, I think that perhaps, for example, with my younger grandchildren, I see them doing math, and then they got to hit a key, and it tells them if the problem's correct or not correct, and it
Yeah.
says go back and things like that. That to me is, productive in its sense. Okay, what it is in those days, if I had a problem, so I was lucky. I had a stay-home mother. There was only a one-income family, so if I had a problem, uh, I would call her over. Um, but needless to say, I scored a 12.8 in the sixth grade in math. So I didn't have too many problems, but I didn't
I
also
don't,
have
well, for us who don't know, I don't know what a 12.8,
12th grade, eighth month. Uh,
12th
in
grade, eighth month in sixth grade.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Wow.
the maximum, yeah. So anyway, so it can be use, useful, useful. But let me just uh, I'll summarize some of the things that healthygamer.gg
Okay.
highlights. Without getting into fancy doctorate names, they say playing too much uh, gaming can cause gamer's thumb, trigger finger, tennis elbow, carpal tunnel syndrome, and it can affect obesity because of the fact kids don't want to get away from the screen and they snack.
Right.
Eye, you alluded to it, eye strain, um, eye fatigue, uh, and along with this, um, I think what didn't I mention to you that China is only allowing 3 hours a week of gaming?
Yes. So recently, across various news outlets, it has been announced that China is limiting anyone under the age of 18 to only 3 hours of video games per day. Um, Personally, I disagree with this. I think I think it's extremely unnecessary for a couple reasons. One, a 17-year-old not having the agency of allowing to play video games for more than 3 hours is problematic because in the sense of, if we are in a world now where people who play video games are pro gamers, they're making millions of dollars playing these games. There's YouTubers, there's content creators, there's Twitch streamers, people who make a living off of playing video games. And that includes people under the age of 18 who are
Yeah,
making a living.
very small percentage, though.
What?
A very small percentage of the population.
Regardless of the percentage, it's the fact that there are people who are doing it, and there is a continuating growth of people who are going towards that job market, shall we say. To then lump the 10-year-olds with the 17-year-olds is my problem. I understand that, yeah, 3 hours is still a lot of time to play video games, but at the same time, the I don't know how to explain this. It's just I don't agree with it. I don't agree with the concept of lumping 10-year-olds with 17-year-olds.
No, either do I. All I'm saying is that you start very young creating habits,
Yeah,
and
right.
it's like an addiction, and it's very difficult if you don't correct it or supervise the gaming at a younger age. It can get out of control for people who do not have control when they're gaming.
Uh, I agree. I think teaching children a sense of control over their own agency and their body, so that they can say, "Yeah, I don't feel like playing anymore," rather than, "No, I have to play. I feel like I need to." Simultaneously, though, I think a good portion of people like your generation and around your age and people younger than you who are making these rules and laws struggle to see the value in online anything compared to us. Um, Nowadays, people are more likely to make friends online and then meet in person than the other way around. For you, it used to be you make friends on in person, and then later on you call them up. You're like, "Oh, how are you?" Later on when cell phones became a thing, and you know you were able to have phone call conversations instead of having to see them all the time. We do it the reverse. We're doing it through the airwaves and through the internet, and then in person. I think your generation and the people who are making these laws don't always comprehend how crucial that is for us, because though the argument of, "Oh, our generation's soft," or "We have too much anxiety," or "We don't go out like your generation used to," well, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. That's just what comes with the innovation. You can't innovate and create so much technology and then ask us not to use it. So, especially when you're the people who founded this creation. So, at the same time, there is a limit to it all.
I'm not saying not to use it.
No,
You
but
still,
what I'm saying though is the concept of they need to get out more. And though I agree with you to an extent. I would say some of it though is a misrepresentation of the use of the internet and video games and what have you. Because video games, in my opinion, aside from the educational side, can significantly help with a lot of stuff, brain functionality and multitasking and communication skills and so many other things that you get to do, and a sense of camaraderie that, in my opinion, can be healthier than in person. Because
okay,
at times,
okay.
because if I'm with a group of friends online, we're playing a game, and some of them start getting toxic and they start getting angry. "Oh, whatever, you're a piece of shit, blah blah." I can turn the game off and go do something else. I
Not
can
the,
literally say, "You know what, man, you have a good night, peace," and that's it. I don't have to deal with it. And that let him have his mood. He's in a bad mood today. Let him deal with it. I don't have to deal with it. That's not my choice. But if I was in person and we're golfing, we're going to Top Golf, and he's in a piss mood and he ruins the night for everyone, I just wasted my time out.
Okay, first of all, I understand what you're saying. It's a different generation, but you're sitting in the house, not you.
No, yeah, you
Let's,
as
let's
as a person, right?
go, let's go up to 13.
Okay.
You are sitting in the house, you're not getting fresh air.
You can open a window.
Well, you're not getting fresh air. Again, if you asked a child, what book did you read? Or even a teenager, what book did you read lately? Oh, it's like in my day, they used to say, okay, you've watched enough television, shut the TV off. Well, it's the same with computer games. Let me just give you quickly what the Child Mind Institute says, and I capsulized it again because they get very, very
They'll get very doctoral and
okay. Yeah, gaming should only occur after a child, because we're breaking it down the early age now. Probably grades K through 6, let's say.
okay.
Not even K.
No,
Kindergarten.
you could say K because that's fine.
Yeah, gaming should only occur after a child completes his or her responsibilities for the day. And that could be their homework. That could be if their mother says you got to do the dishes or you got to keep your room clean. Let me go through it and then we could say
Yeah,
something.
go ahead.
A parent should put limits on the child's gaming. In designing your rules as a parent, you should reassess them because they might be too harsh, or they may not be harsh enough, or you're not supervising properly. Consequences should be for breaking rules to the child, as rewards should be for following rules. Make sure you know and approve of the games your child is playing. Monitor and apply the rules as to the games. Identify what the child could do, alternatives. The child, you see a child is on the game for a long period of time. Give them alternatives. Like I said, books. If you can, you take them out to the park. You go on a trip. You play a game with him. You go on a play date. And reinforce gaming activities again by working with the child. Now, if none of this can be done and the child is just left with the computer doing streaming and playing games, there's a problem with this in the sense that you had said that if you don't like it and you're getting into it with somebody on the game, you could just shut it off. Okay? That doesn't teach the child how to deal in real life when he's in school, and a child might be bullying him or teasing him, or, excuse me, he can't get along with somebody. It doesn't have to be bullying. Or the teacher says to him, now you got to move from math to science, from science to another subject. When you're playing the game and he's on a game and he wants to stay on that level to go to the next level, he's in command. It doesn't teach him how to be in command or follow directions or to interact in the social aspect with other people.
I disagree. I don't think every situation that is a problem needs to be a lesson in taking agency over yourself, because I would argue him walking away from the situation is him taking the agency. Is him being confident and taking control, because he is removing himself from a situation that he knows he's not going to be able to control. He knows that this person is going to get worse and get angrier, and so he removes himself. In the circumstance of in-person situations, that's a case-by-case situation, because I
Right.
would also argue there are plenty of times that for me, I've dealt with friends and family who have gotten mad and I've had to remove myself from the situation because I knew the situation was beyond the point where I could step in and take control or step in and say something to where it would simmer the conversation or the situation down. So learning when to step away is just as important as when to step up.
No, that's good. But when a child is in school, a younger child, and he's told, okay, you have 20 minutes to do your math problems.
Yeah,
20 minutes are up. We're going to review the math problems. I'm not finished, teacher, he says to himself, but she's going to review it. Okay, now we're going to social studies. The teacher is controlling what goes step by step, what is happening.
okay.
When the child is on the computer or streaming, he's controlling. If he wants to go to that
I
next level,
see. I see.
he's not going to get off, and he may say, "No, mom, I can't come to dinner yet. I got to go to the next level," and
I
that's
see.
what can cause a problem in school. Uh, in Jewish, they have a saying, "No sitzfleisch," the ability not to sit for long periods of time doing something that you don't want to do.
I see. Okay. I I understand that point. And I think that ties into something that I was going to add later on, which was immediate gratification, which is the sense of these video games and playing them at a young age where you are not sort of aware enough will create a world around you that makes you think everything comes that fast. Everything comes this fast, that life occurs when you want it, how you want it, and at the speed with which you can make it happen in a video game. So, when you're playing a game and you fast travel from this world to the next world and it takes 3 minutes, and then when you're in the car and you're pissed that you have to be in the car for an hour because you're going on to the beach and you're like, why can't we get there faster? Because you're expecting it to be like a video game where you get there faster. I I agree with you. And I think ultimately the one of the big issues I think we keep circling around is simply just those who want to give an iPad to their child, they need to be aware of what they are giving them at periods of time. They can't just give it to them and say, you're good for like 6 years. Go ahead. They need to be actively participating in whatever their child is doing. Doesn't have to be every day. We, especially in American society, we do not have the capacity as parents. I'm not a parent, but I help raise my little brother, so therefore I am aware of this situation. We to have our own lives as well as do our obligations, jobs, schools, whatever, and then take care of a child, it's not possible. It's not consistently possible. You always have to give up something, whether it's your school, your work, your free time and your mental health, or the child. Something has to give because you can't keep them all consistently because of how much time everything takes right now. So understandably, but my argument is you need to actively be a part of it. Once a week, check in on them. What are they doing? How are they doing? What games are they playing? What are they talking about? Whatever. How much time, just little notes, how much time they've, oh, I see there's not a lot of time on the iPad. Bring in coloring books, construction paper. If you live in an area where they can't see their friends all the time,
Mhm.
do a video call, have them FaceTime their friends, and
Right.
something I want to flip the script on is, which is massively important, is the parents and the people who are taking care of these kids. You cannot argue against iPads if the moment you get off work or the moment you relax, you're putting the TV on or you're going on your phone. You can't. I refuse to agree with anyone who says I hate iPad kids and will actively spend in their adult life 2 to 3 times the amount of time this child's on the iPad on their phones listening to music, and watching TV.
I tend to agree with you.
Because I can list off a million things that an adult can do besides watching TV and scrolling Facebook and watching YouTube. And just because they're an adult and they have agency over it, bullshit. Bullshit. Because a child, we are animal creatures. We are Darwinistically animals. We learn by watching our adults, our whoever is caretaking us. If my child sees me on my phone or watching TV, and then I tell them don't go on their phone or watch TV, they're gonna be pissed. Like, but you get to watch it. You get to watch it whenever you want. Why do I have to read a book if you're not gonna read a book? I
Then read, then you got to read a book.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. You cannot teach your kids something that you won't do yourself just because they're 6 or just because they're 10 or 15. You have to walk the walk and talk the talk. You
I agree.
cannot you cannot
I,
argue, and that's my point. And that's where I would add with the whole 3 hours a day thing. Guaranteed there are adults who, whether it's their job or whether they just enjoy it, are watching television for hours a day, and yet you're going to restrict your child for 3 hours a day to video games.
yeah, because the word adults means you're old enough to hopefully make the right decision for the child. That's why there are adults and there are children. And the problem is some adults aren't mentally adults, but an adult
A good
who,
portion of them.
yeah, an adult who realizes that there has to be balance in his life or her life as well as their children's life will adhere to what you're saying. I know of people uh, who do bad things and do as I say, not as I do,
Yeah.
and that's a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
Okay, but again, what you just said is a point. I used to read a book every 2 weeks. Since damn Netflix and Amazon Prime, and with the passing of your grandmother,
Yeah.
sometimes I am mentally not in the mood to sit down and read. Where I used to read as much, it's easier to turn on the TV, and uh, I'm caught in that syndrome where my streaming is like somebody gaming.
Yeah.
But again, I'm the adult. I should be able to control it. I should know when it's too much and do something about it. Children uh, might not be able to. And that's when adults, again, have to step in and do the right thing. And like you said, do some arts and crafts, uh, take them on a field trip, make a phone call,
Yeah.
and things like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
I agree.
but
I
again,
think there's a couple of things with that. I think I agree with you in the idea. Yes, you cannot tell your child stop with the technology, but then don't give them alternatives. You are the parent. You have to give them those alternatives. Give them the arts and crafts. Buy them a trampoline. You know, don't just give them tasks to do around the house. Don't go on your iPad. I need you to clean the dishes for me. No, that's crap. They want to have fun, so give them fun things to do. Teach them planting. Teach them how to grow stuff. Let them tend to a garden for Christ's sake. They can see a tomato grow and then they can eat it. So it's great. And it
yeah,
teaches them patience. There's plenty of things you can teach them or let them do that is
yep,
not paint. They can paint. And again, the iPad is a world of creativity on its own. You can draw, paint, edit, make videos. You can do so much that you can't do on in person, like physically. You can the amount of painting and the amount of editing and drawing and things that you can do and the access and the freedom that you have because for example, it costs money to get markers and pencils and paper. And
right,
if you're someone who's living paycheck to paycheck, or someone who has just enough, let's say, has an iPad and can't consistently buy new markers once a month because your child is drying them out from using them so much, or paper, because paper is freaking expensive, you know, it's easier to have an infinite amount of paper on an iPad. So I understand that and that creativity, but I agree with you. The adult needs to be more active, and the iPad has become such a convenience that it has allowed adults to become lazy in the sense. Lazy in the sense of being active in their child's life. Doesn't make the parent lazy objectively, because they may be working their ass off and they may not have time,
Right.
they claim, to be in their child's life.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you, whatever, and this is true across the board, if you are invested in something, you will make time for it. So you will always make time for the things you are invested in and love and want to be in. So
What
by all means, you
what
can
bothers
and will make time for your child when you need to.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
there is a sense of, shall we say, laziness that comes with the convenience of the iPad. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
You see, what bothers me is this. Okay. Uh, Let me just say this. You're 23 years old, your sister's 25.
yeah,
I had the privilege of taking care of you from the time you were babies on. I diapered you. I took you places. I read stories to you. I told you stories. Okay. Uh, I played basketball with you. I tried to teach you basketball until you got hurt. Um, what bothers me is when I see a young child and he's going into the fourth, fifth, or sixth grade. He can't catch a ball, can't swing a bat, doesn't know what football or baseball is, or says, I don't want to do that because I want to play my computer game.
yeah.
And that bothers me. It bothers me to the top level because it's not healthy. So I just wanted to throw that in.
That's
That's
fair. I agree with you to an extent with that. I agree with you in the sense of the child needs macro motor skills. Needs it. Absolutely and utterly needs it. Like, I understand athletics is not for everyone. No, everyone is not built for athletics, but to be able to throw a ball or throw a frisbee or catch a ball, that's a motor skill. Being able to say the ball is coming, I need to put my hands here to catch the ball instead of over here. Being spatially aware of your body, that is important, and that's stuff that you learn through sports. So I recognize that sports is the easiest way to train these motor skills, and therefore I will agree with you in that sense. I
especially
don't.
especially when the child gets into school and he has gym
Right,
and the
right.
gym teacher.
And there's a disparity between the kids who have been playing sports and the kids who haven't, and it ends up being a problem because then they get made fun of. Yes, I understand. Uh, I don't think a child should have to be enveloped in a sport or in sports. I think it's greatly beneficial. I think it's healthy, and I think it teaches, you know, depending on the sport, I think it can teach them a lot of camaraderie, and it can teach them a lot of important lessons. You don't always get the participation award, you don't always get the gratification you're looking for. You can work very hard and still lose. You don't, just because you work hard doesn't mean you're guaranteed success. Um, or maybe that success you were looking for is not the success that you needed. Whatever it is, there's tons of lessons that you can learn in sports alone. Which sport is a very important question for your child, because personally, I would never, ever, ever want my child to be in football. Just my opinion. I don't want to have my child cracking necks and spines over football.
I agree with you with that. And I was an athlete, so I agree with you.
I mean, so was I. I played 4 or 5 sports, but like,
Yeah.
I flag football is great. It's a fun game. It's a wonderful game to play with the boys in recess. By all means, football is a sport I can't. God bless those who want to do it and have fun with it.
Yeah,
Can't
but
can't
there's
bring
little
myself to
league,
do it.
there's little league. Uh,
But
There's
regardless, there's tons of things. There's baseball, there's soccer, there's swimming, lacrosse, tennis, whatever it is. It doesn't, and I'm not prejudiced against any sport in the sense of, well, that's a very specific sport. Like only these types of people are for that.
yeah, take
Uh,
your child out to the golf driving range. Take them
well, right, like yeah,
to a swimming pool.
right,
You know,
right. And
there's
but
some,
that's what I'm saying is like I'm against football because of in my opinion, the health risks. That
yeah,
for me, the health risks that come with football outweigh most other sports. Maybe hockey is another one, but like yeah, there's health risks with every sport, but I'm saying specifically football and hockey and things like that. But I don't agree that they need to be, shall we say, enjoying or intimate with the sport. Like they don't need to like baseball. They don't need to like watching baseball. I
yeah,
think at the
okay.
core value, they just need to learn motor skills, catching a ball, throwing a ball, running in a straight line and not tripping over their feet, being spatially aware that when I put my hand up here, I can close my eyes and say my hand is right here. I can close my eyes and say, here's my nose, here's my head, here's my shoulders, here's my chin. And I didn't have to stutter or guide my hand. I knew it was there. And that's something that I think we take for granted, that people don't realize that you actually need to learn is spatial awareness, being able to close your eyes and say, this is my eye, here's my other eye, nose, chin, shoulder, hand, chest, head, ears, and not missing, not missing. That is arguably a sixth sense that we have, because science says we have more than five senses. We have like 8 and 10, and one of them is this sense of spatial awareness, that I can close my eyes and immediately put my finger on my kneecap and go, that's my kneecap. Some people can't do that because they never learned, whether it was through sports or other means. But I think that is a deeply crucial thing for a person. I don't think it's necessarily going to make or break their life. I personally just think, and in agreement with you at its core sense, that it is something that every child should learn. And that's something that you won't get through an iPad or through video games or through the digital realm. It comes through the physicality of life.
Yeah, and it also, uh, you have to make sure your child gets out and goes to school dances, socializes that in that manner.
Right.
Um,
Teach
they
them
may not
to
want
be
to.
out there and physically go out there, because even if the world is digital, we still need to physically participate in the world. Yes.
But that's what is also mentioned in the reviews, that children get caught in the subconscious of these games that they're playing, going from level to level, and the unreality of these games become their reality, as opposed to actually being out there socializing, which is reality. And
Well,
you know,
I think there's extremes on every sense. I think there's extremes in every part of the world. There's people who eat, breathe, sleep football and won't do anything but football, and you can look at that as an unhealthy addiction.
yeah, I agree.
Um, Same thing with video games, same thing with books. I would argue, I think the majority of people, which this thing is probably basing it off the extremes, but I would say the majority of people who may find a form of escapism in their games and find that world interesting are no different than those who go to Comic-Con and Star Trek Con and dress up with their ears for Lord of the Rings and have fun LARPing, live action role play. They have fun pretending to be in the Renaissance and being an ogre and having that kind of fun. And I think that is creative. So
Okay,
I,
let's
I
let's
think it's debatable because it's a case by case situation. Because I think it's a very creative realm for people if they can separate it. If they can separate, that's an important thing. If they can say, yes, today it's done. I LARPed. I went to Comic Con. Great. I can go to bed tomorrow, go to work and be a person, not go to work and be an elf.
let me just end my side of this by saying, being a parent is a great responsibility. It's not an easy responsibility. And again, we must separate the difference of being a child and being a parent
Of
and
course.
use your responsibility properly. And with that, let's move on to an area where you're more familiar with. You're 23, but teenagers and
Young
youth
adult video
and
gamer.
young adult gamers.
Yeah. Um, I think my I think my area of people playing video games, I think we play a lot of video games, but I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people claim it is. Because so an issue that I think your generation sees, which I was saying before, and a lot of people a lot older than us tend to say we're soft. You guys apparently have a lot of mental health issues and whatever else. And that
Me, not me.
I would argue that we all have this. Your generation, my parents, ours, everyone. Everyone has these issues. My generation is just the one that's being open about it. With that being said, we use video games to cope and escape from issues that we cannot necessarily solve right away, or we don't have the money to solve through therapists or medication or what have you. On top of that, I think as someone who's played a significant amount of video games for various reasons, whether it was escapism or just the fun of it, um, I think it's just a hell of a lot of fun. And I think it's very creative. And I see, in my opinion, no different than going to a comic book store and buying 15 comics and sitting there and reading them for 2 hours, because it's a creative thing and you're expressing and you're having fun with it. Because developmentally, yes, if you're 16, you're still developing. I'm 23. For the most part, I am almost done developing. I think 25 is when your brain stops, I think. Um,
You're always developing.
no, that's true. I mean, from when you are growing up, there is a specific area of time from 1 to I think it's 25 where you are still developing in the sense of an adult. After that, yes, you still develop, you still gain new skills and you still learn and do things, but as a from the embryonic state to this point, that stage, shall we say, stages in life, you is from birth to I like I said, I think 25. Um, so I'm almost at that point. So yeah, a 16-year-old playing video games for 7 hours a day is still problematic because yeah, it causes obesity, it causes carpal tunnel, it causes various problems in the arms, and it causes them to rely on unhealthy habits. They won't eat or go to the bathroom or drink water for hours at a time when they need to do that. Simultaneously, I don't know if they would even practice that if they were doing other things. So the concept of would they still be drinking water or going to the bathroom at the amount of times that they should be instead of playing games? Don't know, because sometimes there's plenty of people out there who just get enveloped in what they're doing. It could be reading a book and they're like, oh crap, it's been 3 hours. I should drink some water and go to the bathroom, whatever it
Take a
is.
shower.
Yeah, or take a shower, right? Uh, it's a difficult conversation, and this is always the case with everything. There is never a black and white. There's never a black and white. It's always going to be a spectrum. There's always going to be people on one end that are playing for 9 hours a day. They're not showering. They're eating one meal a day, and they're living off of energy drinks and Doritos, and they smell like a sewage dump got hit by a nuke. Um, and then there's people who play for 20 minutes a day and they treat it like a robot and they're like, no, no games. Blah. And then there's people in the middle. Most of the people are going to be in the middle. And that's what we're trying to address. Uh, Personally, I think as if it, even if you were to play video games for like 7 hours, if it's a Saturday, screw it. So what? So what? Let them play for 7 hours. The Compared to what I've seen other people do, which is they go to a bar for 5 hours or 6 hours. You're telling me that sitting, playing video games, cultivating friendships, and working on fine motor skills and what have you is more unhealthy than going to a bar and getting drunk for the same amount of time and losing money.
No, you're really taking the extreme.
No, no, I'm saying because there's people who do that. They go to a bar every weekend.
Go out and commit murder because
No,
they're
no,
bored.
because that's not an extreme. Going to a bar is a very social event. It's something that people do every weekend. That's a weekendly thing. I know plenty of people who do it. They bar crawl every single weekend, Friday,
Yeah,
Saturday.
that's not healthy. And I
So,
would rather.
but that's my point though, is especially in our society, America, because America is very much alcohol is a very big thing for us. So bar crawling is a huge deal. Um, and a significant amount of people are alcoholics or acute alcoholics who don't want to admit it. So, but my point though is a kid playing video games on over a weekend for let's say 5 6 hours a day versus a guy who's going to a club or a bar Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday he's drinking at home for 6 or 7 hours a day. Which one's more unhealthy?
I would say drinking, but if you gave me a lot of other things compared to drinking, I would say drinking. Okay.
Well, that's fine. I'm simply the reason I used drinking was because that is a common thing that I can bring up as someone who's a 23-year-old and knows a lot of people who do it.
Yeah,
That is something that I compare it to.
that's very bad. Anything that's done in the extreme that
Well, I
uh,
wouldn't even consider that extreme. That's not considered extreme in America. That's considered social. That's considered normal. To us, to you and me, that's considered extreme. But to most people my age, a little older than me and a little younger than me, that's normal. That is considered quite normal to spend your Friday and Saturday and sometimes Sunday going out and drinking, going out and partying and celebrating because it's the weekend. They live for the weekend warriors. That's a lot of people.
okay, so let me ask you a question. I understand what you're saying, and you're right. You just made a comparison because you have to be right with that comparison.
Well,
But
but obviously there's other comparisons. Yes.
would you rather have your son or daughter being uh, streaming or being on the computer for lengths and lengths of time rather than going on a date or going uh, out with a group of friends bowling or going out with a group of friends maybe to the golf driving range or going to Top Golf or going to the library? Which would you rather have?
By all means, I would choose the latter, which is in-person stuff, golf,
Yeah,
library, whatever. Of course I'd pick that. Of
okay.
course.
But I'm not negating being on the computer for fun. I'm just
Right. No,
saying,
it's the concept of excess. Uh,
right.
the idea that it doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be for 9 hours a day. Um, you know, I I think a major thing is simply just self-control and uh not only self-control but also self ambition or self-drive to go in and pursue other things because as you when you're an adult I think it's a little more acceptable to be on the internet because as an adult you have more freedom to do more. Like a 6-year-old is not going to start educating himself on stocks. You know what I mean? He's not going to go on the internet and try and educate himself on stocks. A 6-year-old is not capable of that realistically. You're not going to self educate through the internet. You're not going to try and build a business on the internet. You're not going to look up a new form of health path, yoga, meditation, whatever, on the internet at 6 or 12 or 13. Because at 13, you are very self centered and thinking about what you are doing, what people think of you. Self centered, not in a problematic sense, but in terms of just talking about the ego. That is puberty. We're all thinking of our bodies changing. We're not thinking of how can I keep my body healthy so that when I'm 50, I'll have a good shape and I won't have brittle bones. No, we're not thinking of that at 13. We're thinking
Okay.
of that in our 20s. We're thinking of that in our 30s because we're now able to focus on it. So that's where being on technology and using technology, for that sense, becomes more beneficial and useful.
Yeah, like you said to me, Paul, go on and learn a little bit about yoga or certain other things. I'll give you the app for streaming. Then
Right.
it's up to do it or not. No, it's very construction, conducive to helping you. But again, you're balanced with it. You enjoy your games. You spend time on your games. You'll you'll also make the choice. Which would you rather be? Spend 3 hours on a game or 3 hours with your girlfriend?
Of course. Right. Easy choice. Video
Oh,
games.
what is your choice? You better be very careful.
It's the girl. It's my girlfriend. It's my girlfriend.
So it's not that everybody has to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend
No,
or
but the concept of interaction and being out with people, and I think especially with this pandemic, we have come to be aware of that more. That we value being outside and being with people more. But
yeah. Now
yeah,
computers in general, not just gaming, uh, learning your skills uh, can help you with future endeavors and work at work and so on and so forth. But um,
and I
uh,
think it's also beneficial because there's people who want to be in the gaming industry or the
yeah,
internet business. By all
absolutely,
means,
absolutely.
right?
But like when I used to coach basketball and the kids were 18 years of age, and I saw a basketball player that was very talented, and I used to say to him, "How are your grades? Terrible. Or what are you doing? I don't go to school anymore. Why? I dropped out. I mean, I taught in Bedford Stuyvesant, for 18 years, which is a ghetto community in Brooklyn. And I would say, do you realize that there are a very small percentage of people who become professional basketball players? What you should strive for is go to school, utilize your schooling, perhaps get a scholarship to college if you're capable, which might get you a better job. But it's the same thing with computers. If you're not using it as a means to an end and it's just fun and relaxation and it's not harmful and you're balancing it out with real life, great. And without going back to what we previously discussed, uh, I wish I had those games when I was younger. I probably would have played them, but I made up games for myself and I had fun playing these games. So uh, I could see where somebody enjoys it. Um, Also, you're also on YouTube. You're also using streaming, not just to play with, but to use your skills on it
To create.
to create. Okay, so I see where it's worthwhile. And I don't think you had anybody giving you guidance when you were younger, telling you not to do this, not to do that.
Nope.
Uh,
I was playing. There was a good point in my middle school where I was playing video games for 6 hours a day.
yeah, yeah, and it's happened, So again, so now when I just want to say something that's not apropos, but
Okay.
I, I remember when I used to go for a job interview. Today, most job interviews are online,
Yeah.
and and I had to go in person because there was no computers. And I remember one of the questions they used to ask me all the time, forgetting about education, forgetting that I have, couple of master's degrees, but not just in education. But they always used to say, "What books have you read lately?"
Yeah.
Okay, and I wonder how many young adults will say, well, let's see, newspapers
Not
fall
even.
by the
Not
wayside.
not even. Not
Not
even
even,
newspapers. And so and that's yeah, we can definitely get into that on another time if you want, but like as someone who loved reading in high school, I Stephen King. I something hit me. I got hit by a meteor, and Stephen King was on it because from junior to senior year of my high school, I was reading like a madman. I
right.
discovered Stephen King, and I was like, "This is good shit," um, and I was loving it.
Yeah, like I read
I
45.
I haven't I haven't read his books in years, and it's depressing me because I loved his books, and simultaneously I've read other books, and that may also come with age. I no longer seek out um, the fantasy world. I seek more realistic books, or I seek more educational books. Like I've been using this to create content, but I've been using this 10,000 things you need to know. I love learning about random facts. I love learning about information like that. So that's a book that I'm technically reading. It's not a linear novel with a narrative, but it's still a book. Um, but yeah, it's deeply sad to know that most of the people I know probably haven't even touched a book since they were in high school. And it's depressing. And that's not just because of video games, that's because of social media.
Yeah, and that's one thing I got to get back to. I've read all almost 50 books of Robert Parker, the renowned mystery writer and Western writer,
Right.
and who's also been a producer of movies. He's passed away, so now there's ghost writers. But uh, again, the problem for me, because I'm the next step, is this streaming of all these uh, apps that you could watch on TV. How do you get away? It's addictive. You got to get away from it, you know.
Well,
So
I don't necessarily agree you have to get away from it because I think it's just a different perspective. I think there needs to be a perspective on that because and this will be we'll sum it up after this, but like I think streaming isn't necessarily bad. I think it can be addicting because of how accessible it is and how convenient it is. But the you I think you need to change your perspective on it because there is a significant amount of art and artistry coming from streaming, whether it's whatever you want to focus on, the writing, the plot, the CGI, the lighting, the whatever it is. I mean, a good example is I took film courses and my film professors were using streaming services to teach their classes because there's so much quality films that we have access to that you used to have to go to a library in New York where they
totally.
had one copy to watch it. Like it's a beautiful thing to have that access. And say, I mean, it's the same way with our phones. We have access to the world of knowledge, and yet most of us don't use it. Most of us won't teach ourselves how to use it. A woman built her own house off of YouTube videos because it was cheaper. She saved herself hundreds of thousands of dollars building the house with her. I think it was like 5 kids. She built the house. She bought the materials and learned how to build the house rather than buy one for a more price. So the perspective on streaming being bad because it's addictive is partially true. It's addictive and that's wrong, but streaming in itself is not inherently wrong. That is people's art. That's people's job. That's art. I mean, it's like
Everything
it's
in
just it's
moderation.
having we've so much access to it that it's overwhelming, and that we
Everything
don't know
in
how to
moderation.
cover it all.
Everything in moderation.
Yes, yes.
You want to
And
go?
I think that's the key to the entire conversation.
Yeah,
Everything in moderation. The
yeah,
iPad, the video games, the parents teaching them how to use the iPad. I think it's they need to when it comes to an iPad kid, they need to learn moderation and patience.
yes. I just don't want to hear in the future, what's a library? And we're going to hear it because libraries are closing. One, two,
No,
three.
no, you know what's gonna this is what's gonna happen. It's not gonna be what's a library. The term for a library is also used for music. So you go to your music library.
Right,
People are gonna go, if you're gonna say, oh, let's go to the library, they're gonna be like, on my phone? Like, what do you mean? You don't read books at a library, you have music on your library.
right.
It's the same thing happened about 10 years ago with the floppy disk. People were like, oh, that's the save button. That's Microsoft Word's save button. No, that's a floppy disk. That's a freaking, that was what was before a CD. That's what you saved crap on.
Yeah,
That wasn't even my time, and I still know that. Like,
yeah, you're right.
that's what's going to happen. The word is going to transmute into a new meaning. And
Mm.
you know, I hope we never lose libraries because those are one of the few sanctities in our world that are still pure, in my opinion.
Well, as long as my mind is functioning and I have young grandchildren, I will try to acquaint them not just to video games, but to other activities, books, and places to go to. And as long as we still keep developing apps and other means of streaming, it's going to be your job to keep me occupied and up to date because without you, I would be lost. Fortunately, on certain things, I can adapt. A lot of things I can't, but there are
And that's
people.
fine. Arguably, you're not necessarily meant to adapt to all of it because, you literally were using typewriters and now you're using Zoom. So that's a feat in its own that I don't think a lot of people give your generation praise for. Um, but that's massive. I can't comprehend being you, where you went from a freaking typewriter, click, punch, paper to this space magic, wireless, visual space magic. Like, you can obviously like learn it and understand it, but like my generation, my brother's generation will never comprehend how you guys went from that to this. And there's a whole mess of a conversation about that and why your generation gets pissed and whatnot. But you guys don't get enough praise for the fact that you're doing this right now. You're on Zoom right now with me doing this podcast and having this time. That's a
and I
freaking massive feat.
and I appreciate it. And I just want to, before we, end this, unless you have more to say, I want to make a comment about our last video. Um, uh, a comment was made to me by somebody 10 years older than me, who I respect and I see all the time. And we were talking about certain things like dating and sex. And he says, that's one thing you should not be talking to your grandchild about by putting it out in public. You want to talk about it in private. And everybody has an opinion, okay? Also, with the music, I had asked some people who had listened to our suggestions, music to get laid by or music to make out by, if they had other suggestions, which in the context of my conversation with them, they did, I said, well, send it in. Nobody has sent it in.
By
So,
all means, by all
so
means, if anyone has a comment They want to say something, put it in the freaking comments. For those who are watching, put it in the comments. I want to hear. I want to be able to respond to these. And I'd love if people have comments or have an idea that they want discussed, throw it in the comments. We can discuss it. That'd be awesome. There's
And
apparently at least 30 people watching these videos. So fuck it.
yeah, where are the
Put
comments?
something in.
Where are the comments?
Right. We're calling you out. All of you. All last video got 30 views. The one before that was 29, and the one before that was 46. Where the hell are you? Some odd 30 people. Put
Okay.
something in the comments. I want to see it. I want to hear it. Don't message me on Instagram. Put it in the fucking comments. Let's do it.
Okay, so keep watching us, and I hope you're enjoying these podcasts.
I'm enjoying it. So I don't give a shit if they enjoy it. I care about you and me. But by all means, I hope they do enjoy it.
Okay, Peter,
right.
I love you.
I love you too. Until the next one, which I don't know what the hell we're going to talk about next. We'll figure it out. Goodbye.
All right.